Welcome back to Uncaged Leaders. I'm your host, Mariquita Solis, the Uncaged Heart Coach. This show is dedicated to the successful man who on paper has it all, the career, the house, the financial security, but who feels deep down inside that he's fighting a soul war and he's not sure what's going on. And this man is ready to end the hollow silence of the man box and finally build a life of courage, purpose, and authenticity. I bring a unique approach, years of training from the Institute for Women-Centered Coaching, Training, and Leadership. And this is combined with my direct social work experience with little boys shutting down their feelings in a residential treatment center, giving me that insight to that exact moment when the shutdown starts and building those walls. As an empath and a highly sensitive coach, I help men reconnect with the very things they were told to shut down, their vulnerability, compassion, and somatic system. So today, I'm very honored to welcome a good friend and another coach, Anita Marriott. Anita was raised by a single dad who wished she were a boy. So I can only imagine that. Anita was taught to deal with her feelings like a man and like ignoring them, and that led to disastrous consequences for her relationships. So it was well into her 30s that Anita learned that feelings aren't just for girls. They drive everything we do, no matter our gender and no matter whether we are aware of them or not. Today, Anita is a life and mindset coach who helps people understand their feelings and process them in healthy ways so that they can finally get the life and relationships they truly want. So I'm excited to talk to you today, Anita, because we had touched on this briefly in my other interview. So thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, and this is something that we're not aware of. I mean, many people aren't aware of the shutdown of emotions. They get into relationships with people and they wonder what's going on? Why is this person acting this way? And then they take it personally. Like they think, well, this person must hate me, or this person, why is this person turning away from me? And so here we're here to find out what's going on and to realize that it's not just happening to men, but it can also happen to women. So tell me about your childhood. So you apparently your father wanted a son. Let's start there.
Yeah. My dad had a very complex history of his own, and I think it really started in his childhood. So from everything that he told me, and he was a very open dad who shared a lot about his childhood with me when I was a child. And so from what he described, he didn't really ever experience a great deal of maternal love from his own mother. It sounded like she was quite rejecting of him right from the beginning. And then on top of that, she actually suffered a violent death when he was only 6 years old. It actually happened in front of him. So I can only imagine the kind of trauma that he experienced at that time. Now, the person who was there for my father's father, and in that sort of time of tragedy, was was his mother's best friend, who then soon became his wife and therefore my father's stepmother. Now, unfortunately, this lady, again, not only didn't show any sort of maternal feeling towards my father and his brother, but in fact, she was actually quite violent. And so my father ended up growing up in this situation with a very violent stepmother who would beat him severely and at one point even stabbed him. So like really horrific kind of violence. And so his entire childhood growing up, all my father ever seemed to experience from women and the caregiving women in his life was rejection and violence. So it wasn't surprising that he grew up to be a man who was somewhat, I would say, afraid of women, definitely very misogynistic in his behavior. So no wonder, his relationships didn't last. He ended up as a single dad because my mother, was similar to his own mother, not very caregiving, had mental issues of her own, so which are unfortunately undiagnosed and unresolved. So whereas my dad desperately wanted to have children, he desperately wanted to be the parent he didn't have. And so he was a wonderful, loving dad to me who really truly cared for me, but he did have this blind spot of he didn't really want to acknowledge that I was female. I think because of that ingrained, I guess, fear of women. And it was great while I was a child and, pre-puberty, you can just pretend. But because of that violent childhood, that traumatic childhood that he had, I think he also really wanted to protect me. And he was in a way trying to teach me all of the lessons that he had learned, which unfortunately were not very helpful to him in adult life. And in childhood, learning things like you don't show emotion, you don't cry because when you cry, they beat you harder. Those were the lessons that he learned. And unfortunately, trying to take care of me and protect me, he was passing those same lessons on to me. So while he never ever was violent towards me, he would share these stories with me of, the more I cried, the more she hit me. And I, as a very young child, kind of internalized that to a certain extent of that is what happens. And, people who are particularly sadistic will actually, hurt you more the more you show, fear and feeling, and upset. And then, in addition to that, I remember this very specific incident where I must have been maybe about 6 or 7 years old myself, and I stepped on a bee. And it stung my foot, and it was in public, and I started to cry. I started to wail, and my dad stopped me, and he said, "Why are you crying?" And I looked at him like, "Okay, well, because it hurts." And he said, "Well, does crying make it hurt any less?" And I thought about it and I realized no, it was still hurting. So I said no. And he said, "So why are you crying?" And I couldn't come up with a good reason for it. But the message that it conveyed to me was crying is pointless. And combined with all the previous messaging I'd heard from him about how he was treated as a child when he cried, I put it together to mean that crying is a sign of weakness, and it's something that is going to invite more violence upon you, or it's going to cause people to see you as weak, not respect you, not believe you to be worthy of all the things. And in addition to that, there'd be other little comments as well, like adults really don't like children that make a fuss. Adults don't like children that are annoying, which I interpreted as adults don't like children who are expressive and out there and attention seeking and all that. So I learned to be a very quiet and compliant child, who learned to shut down all the exuberant emotion as well as the upset. So I didn't express it, not because I was afraid of my dad, but because I'd internalized that message, that you had to be strong and self-reliant, and if you're experiencing something you didn't like, you kind of just had to suck it up. Right. So that's what I grew up with. That was my background. And then, as a child, I guess it served me because it got me the kind of response that I wanted from my caregivers. So my dad was very proud of his very strong and self-reliant child. And the adults always praised me for being so well behaved and so quiet and so polite and, always did what I was asked. My dad very much raised me to be like, you don't question it. It was very, very militaristic. I think people even described it was like, it's like your dad was a commander, and when he told you to do something, you jumped right to it. That's the kind of straight to attention kind of behavior that I learned to express. So served me really well as a child, right through school, lots of praise, lots of reward. And then of course I got into adulthood and I started having relationships with people where sometimes there was conflict in those relationships and things needed to come out and be expressed. And what I started to find was that when I got to a point of being distressed and really just needing a good cry, I would shut down. So if I was in a situation with another person, and the more I cared about the person, the worse this became, right? Because the instant that I felt like I needed to cry, this incredible, fear, this existential fear would overcome me that if I open my mouth to express what I need to say to this person, I know I'm going to start crying, and if I start crying, they will see me as weak and unworthy, and they will reject me, right? And that, that's as good as death for us social creatures, who are so desperate for love and connection, and feeling worthy of that. And so what I would do is I would go into this kind of into freeze state, really, this kind of what it looked like to the other person was stonewalling. I would just become blank. I would just stare straight ahead. I wouldn't even dare move. So probably looked a bit like I was catatonic. But the way that it would be interpreted by the other person is just that I was freezing them out, that I was just ignoring them and I was being cold and cruel. Obviously, that did not serve my relationships very well. So yeah, that took me a very, very long time to realize. And honestly, I think it came down to the point where the man who is now my husband, expressed that this was a serious problem, that, he could not be with someone, he could not communicate with somebody who just froze him out every time there was some kind of conflict, that I actually started to take this seriously and think, oh, what's going on here? So that was my turning point. But yes, that's my story.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Yes, and
Mm.
my heart goes out to your father and everything that he suffered. My gosh, yes, and it makes sense that he came up with that strategy, right? And then he wanted to protect you, so he passed down the strategy. And this is what's happening with men. The childhood strategy, like you said, it served you well during that time. But then when you're out of childhood, then you're not able to communicate. And um, and what you said about and the tears, I mean, what good is that? But now we know that tears release that emotional stress. So tears are effective in calming the body. And so that's very interesting. I never thought about that, but yeah. And sometimes I can't cry. And I think it's like, I mean, I might be so overwhelmed with emotions that, I want to release it, but it doesn't come out. And it's,
Mm.
I don't like that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's something to look at and examine. And if we don't know, if we're not aware of that, then that is the turning point is awareness. Like, what is happening to me? Am I self-aware enough? And have someone else point it out to you, like your husband did. And then for you, not to be defensive, but to say, I'm going to look into this and see how I can change my behavior with gentleness and not beating yourself up about it, but with curiosity.
Yes. I'm so glad I was able to do that. And actually, you just mentioned how it doesn't feel good when you find yourself overwhelmed with emotion but unable to cry. And I distinctly recall that feeling, and it felt almost like, for me, like my chest was going to burst, like this tremendous sense of pressure in my chest and into my throat, where it was just this most incredible clenching pain, such a painful state to be in. It was physically painful to not be able to cry and release that. Yeah, so definitely, I think if anyone is finding themselves in that place, gosh, it's so important to know that just letting it out with the tears gives you instant relief. Yeah, so finding a way to do that is so important.
Yeah, and that's what Anthony Martinez, I don't know if you know Anthony, he is, I don't know if he's the executive director. I think he is of Casa Vegana, but nevertheless, he came on the show and he talked about the cinder block on his chest, that cinder block of
Hmm.
like not living in integrity. And so that's not living in the integrity of your feelings, but suppressing them and just
Yes.
carrying that cinder block on your chest until you're able to release. And what about if you don't even know how to release it? What's the first step? Because I remember you saying that I couldn't get the words out, right? I wanted to speak, but I couldn't physically.
Really all about realizing that I was safe, because at that time it felt unsafe. It felt like if I open my mouth, the tears will start, and then that's it. This relationship is lost. He will never respect me because I'm weak. And so the realization was that it wasn't that. And I think it really helped that he explained this to me, like later. Obviously I couldn't speak in that situation. It wasn't until later that I actually I guess got the courage to explain explain what it was that I experienced in these situations. And then my lovely husband was able to say, listen, you're safe with me. You're able to cry. It's not a problem. So just having that assurance that I wouldn't lose his love if I cried. That was the first time somebody had had that conversation with me, and actually allowed me to feel safe, knowing that I could just be myself. I could express my emotions. And then I was around the time that I was also starting to, discover life coaching, and I started listening to podcasts. I think I was listening to some psychology podcasts at the time and was learning about the role of crying and just how important it was. So putting those two things together, knowing I was safe to do that, and also how valuable it was to be able to do so, I started to allow myself to do that. So yeah, and now it comes easy because now it feels safe. Now I know that it doesn't matter who I cry around, doesn't matter what they think of me, it doesn't change my worthiness.
Yes, you're right. It doesn't. And we're humans, and so many men and women now are, I mean, that the society rewards that strength, right? Of that stoic um, nature. And when you cry, of course, you are. Society says you're weak, and you're being like a girl. Girls cry, right? And don't be a sissy, right? So, I mean, we're setting ourselves up for failure, and we can see it in the society that's cold and callous and without feeling. And what does that do? I mean, that creates this world where people are being abused and hurt because, I mean, if people are turning off their feelings and being rewarded for that, I mean, this is what the outcome is. So when you were with your father and you watched him, now, did you see that? Did you see? Well, my dad acts differently than some, than maybe mothers or other people, I mean, I don't want because a lot of men act that way also. So did you notice that he acted differently, and did you see that as a child?
Yeah, definitely. So yes, 100%. So it was very much a very much a front, a bravado kind of front with my dad. He always had this mask on, where everything just, rolled off him. Nothing ever bothered him. He was always the strong man, the tough man, and he would put down and ridicule, first of all, women all the time, which absolutely did bother me, particularly once I hit puberty. But anyone who was perceived to be weaker, so certainly, men who did not act the way that he believed men should act, which was that toughness. So he would absolutely criticize and ridicule. So I definitely noticed that he was probably the toughest of tough guys, in my world. Yeah.
That is very interesting. I mean, I had similar experiences as a child like that, watching someone in our close family doing that. I mean, with this mask that was not penetrable because his mother had told him, "I wish you had died instead of your brother." So, I mean, that that armor, it was so hard, and it was just hatred towards the minorities and slander, and it was awful. And it, like you said, I mean, before I hit the puberty, it was fine, wonderful. And then I realized, oh my gosh, what's happening here? And thankfully for me, I went the other way. I'm like, I'm not going to be like that at all. So, but I also wasn't taught that by him. But it is frightening to watch. Now, did you have people that wanted you to cry or were warmer in your life as a child?
Um, yes. I can certainly think of a few women sort of role models who came and went and who were very kind and maternal towards me. But I don't recall ever letting my guard down with any of them. I think I had also, in a way, been trained not to trust women at that point. Because like my father, I had that unfortunate, experience with my own mother, who was very cold and very rejecting. So I did not have that maternal love. And then, of course, I had all of my father's stories and all of his attitudes towards women, that they're not to be trusted, and all of those things. So I think I very much kept my guard up. And I think it probably served my poor father in a couple of ways. One is obviously he didn't trust the women who came into my life, and because I was his only child and it was just him and I can imagine that there would have been a sense of fear or even jealousy had I grown close to any of these women. So I don't think that would have suited him very well. So I think it suited him very well that I kept that armor up with them.
Yeah, I could see that. And so are your parents alive now?
My dad still is. My mum actually passed quite a few years ago now, well over a decade ago. They were obviously not together from when I was probably about 8 years old that they finally separated. Um, but yes, so my dad is still around. I don't think his attitude has changed. He's never got professional help for it. He still thinks, psychology is quackery. And I don't know what he thinks of coaching entirely. So he's kept that up. He's kept it up his entire life. It's not something I've been able to, break through. I don't know if anyone will at this point.
Yeah. So what does he think about you now? I mean, now that you have had this transformation.
Oh, good question. Um, that's a really great question. I think, you know what, he tells me that he's proud of me of all all of the things that I've achieved because I've achieved everything he was hoping I would in life. But it's still at that level. It's not about talking about emotions. I think he still just has like a little chuckle at my coaching coaching hobby. He still thinks it's kind of it's kind of just a made up thing. I think it kind of puzzles him that I'm actually able to earn some kind of income from this, that people actually need help with these things. So I think that was a bit of a disappointment to him when I decided to go into this field. I think he's still puzzled over it, but he's humoring me because ultimately he does love me. He's actually proud of me, and I know that. And so it really doesn't matter if he doesn't quite get this.
Right. Yes, you're right. Yeah, my heart goes out to him. I mean, that he has to have that armor on. And so, gosh, um, then he would see a change in you. I'm sure he would have seen if you were very, because let's talk about emotions. When you shut down emotions, what happens? I mean, can you pick emotions to shut down? Like, I'm going to shut down this emotion, I'm going to shut down that emotion, and I'm going to keep on this emotion. How does that work?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you can. I think what we do naturally is any emotion that doesn't feel safe to feel, we try to suppress or shut it down. So anything that tells us, uh-oh, I've felt this before and something bad happened when I expressed it, I won't express it now. And it probably came from that earliest part of childhood. We might not even remember the incident or incidents that led to us not feeling safe in expressing those emotions. I just happen to have that very clear memory of that incident with the bee. That then was actually my key to unlocking the source of my inability to cry. That was when I started exploring what is going on here. Why am I experiencing this when other people can cry and release that pain and that tension? Why can't I? And I had to think back about what were my memories of crying, what were my experiences around that as into the earliest childhood, like when was the last time I could remember crying, and what happened then, and that's how I was able to unpick it. So yes, absolutely, I'm sure that there are emotions, and I think that's why we see men who don't seem to have a lot of emotion, but then exploding with anger, because anger is an acceptable form of emotion for men. Yeah, in so many people's eyes, yeah. So that's where it comes out. All the frustration, the pain, or whatever is then transmuted and then comes out in this rather destructive way.
Yes, anger. And then another one that's acceptable is lust. And then I think so many men are wanting some excitement in their lives, but they're not able to get it in the relationships because if they shut down their emotions, you're not able to connect. So then they turn to other ways like pornography or, I mean, things that are exciting, that are like even, I mean, who knows what? I mean, maybe even illegal things, right? I mean, substance abuse, who knows if like car racing. I mean, these are exciting things, and that would fill the place of the now. It's very exciting when you have a partner that is safe and when you have that deep connection. you're not looking, well, now I want to go to the movies, I want to go eat dinner. What you crave is that connection that is safe and the growth in this partnership. So then you would go outside to get it in those other forms. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. Yes, I 100% agree that is exactly what happens. So, as far as I'm aware, there's like really two things that we do with emotions. If we well, there's three things that we can do with emotions. One is basically like push them down and suppress them or try to ignore them. And they don't go anywhere. They're still there. And then in order to numb ourselves to that, what we do is we buffer with these other kinds of activities, these things that give us a bit of a dopamine hit, or even an adrenaline surge, some kind of strong or feeling or pleasure that is acceptable according to society. So we find it in, we find it in food, we find it in alcohol, we find it in recreational drugs, we might find it in doing, risk-taking behaviors that somehow allow us to feel in a way that is perceived as acceptable to society. So I call it kind of buffering because it allows us to kind of like dull or override whatever emotion it is that we're not prepared to feel, whatever it doesn't feel safe for feeling. So that's one thing that we do with it. Now, unfortunately, the thing about these buffering behaviors is that in the long term, they tend to be detrimental to us. They tend to be harmful. If we constantly eat instead of feeling our feelings or drink alcohol or take drugs, chances are there's going to be some bad consequences to our health or relationships or other things as a result of that. The other thing that some people do, as I mentioned earlier, it just explodes, comes out. So we suppress it, we try and ignore it, we can't. Eventually it bursts out when it gets too much. And that's when we shout at people, we slam doors, we might even be violent. So that's the second thing that can happen. And then the third is that we could actually just feel our feelings, right? Because the thing is when we're suppressing them or we're spewing them out at the world, we're not actually feeling them. We're trying to, either expel them or pretend that they don't exist. Feeling them is actually the natural thing that we were designed to do. And this is what most of us don't realize, is that if we actually just allow ourselves to feel our feelings, it is actually the least unpleasant and the most rewarding thing we can possibly do. So that is very much what I focus on with my clients who I work with, is I actually teach them to feel their feelings and realize that a feeling is nothing more than a sensation in our body that's generated as a result of a thought or thoughts that we're having. And those thoughts might be subconscious, and those feelings might be getting generated without us realizing, and we might not even have words to describe them, but we're certainly capable of experiencing them as physical sensations in our body. And if we actually allow them, instead of trying to hold on to them and suppress them, it actually feels so much pain, so much less painful, because so much of that, the pain that, you and I were talking about, the cinder block on the chest, which is, I think, is a great description for that incredible pain that I felt as I was trying to suppress that distress. That incredible pain that we carry is actually a result of the suppressing of the emotion. It's not the emotion itself. When we let it go, it's actually an enormous relief to just be able to feel the sensation and go, oh, you know what? It's nothing more than a little bit of pressure, a little bit of heat, a little bit of tingling. I'm capable of feeling it. And you know what? It passes in about 2 minutes, because that's how long the actual little chemical messengers and nerve signals actually persist for after we've had the thought that generated the feeling. And if we realize that, then we understand that we're capable of feeling any feeling at all. And once we have that, that is just the most incredibly empowering thing. So when you asked about, my relationship with my dad, I think it's become a very different thing. It's very much switched to, I think, as it often does for adult children, is I now very much feel like I'm the empowered adult. I no longer worry that he's not going to care for me or respect me if I express how I feel. At the same time, I also know that I don't have to spew my emotions at him. I know that I'm capable of feeling them first, and then expressing them in a kind way, if that makes sense. So I'm able to just simply feel it, acknowledge what feeling I'm having, and also take ownership and responsibility for it, knowing that that feeling is coming from my thoughts, which are 100% optional. And if they're subconscious, I have the choice of surfacing them, making myself aware of them, deciding, do these thoughts actually make sense? Are they serving me? Do I want to keep them? And I get to make that decision. And then the really exciting thing is I actually get to choose what feelings I want to feel with intention. Right. So if I'm experiencing an unpleasant feeling, be it frustration or guilt or shame or whatever, I can allow it to just simply be in my body, to sense it, to describe it, to give it a name, and not what's the word? Not let it be me, if that makes sense. So I would not say things like I am angry or I am ashamed. I would simply say this is anger, this is shame. It's a feeling that's passing through me. It is not me. Right? It doesn't engulf me, it doesn't define me. It is just a feeling that's passing through my body, and I can choose to feel something different if I want to. And that is exactly what I do. So incredibly empowering and strong is how it makes me feel. So now I know that I can just show up with my dad as my true self. And you know what? The world hasn't ended. Yes, he might make a joke about my profession or whatever, but I don't make it mean anything about me. I don't make it mean that I'm unworthy, because I know that I'm 100% worthy, and I get to choose how I feel about his reaction as well. And what I feel towards him is just, yeah, incredible compassion, because I know what he's gone through, and I can imagine the kind of pain he must carry. I can just hold compassion for that instead. So yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. That the compassion element. And y'all, if you're watching, please subscribe and share this with people, with everyone. Everyone needs to hear this message, and realizing that feelings, allowing the feelings, I mean, it's a gradual step-by-step process, right? And when we don't allow the feelings, we try to suppress them, but they're going to come out. And when they come out, or we shut down, and we keep trying to suppress those feelings, I mean, they're going to surface again. I mean, that's what I mean, you can explode and hurt the family, right?
Mhm.
And but the feelings are still there because they never have been
Hmm.
expressed. So then it's just the same process. Push them down, explode, push them down,
Yes.
explode. I mean, could you talk about this? Because you've lived that. I haven't. I mean, not
Ah,
to that
okay.
extent.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, no, you're right. It just keeps recurring because at that point, we're unaware of the fact that we're creating the feelings. We just think, well, we might not even realize that we're having feelings. And that's for the longest time, I always identified as a thinker, not a feeler. And so many of my clients are in this category as well. I will ask them, how do you feel about that? And they will start by responding, well, I think. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, don't tell me what you think. Okay, so what do those thoughts lead you to feel? What feeling are those thoughts creating? So we spend a lot of time unearthing their thoughts and then looking at, okay, what feeling is that thought now creating? Because I can guarantee you that feeling is driving your actions, whether you're aware of that feeling or not. So let's figure out what feeling it is and see if it's serving you. Um, what basically happens is if we're not aware that it's our thinking or even our very deeply ingrained underlying beliefs that we might have held since we were 3 years old, if we're not aware that those are the things that are driving our feelings, then yes, we'll bottle it up, we'll numb it out, we'll buffer it. We might have a little explosion and it might feel good to just have got rid of it for the moment. But the thought that created it is still there. It's probably an autopilot. It's there as a backing track, at the back of our mind, just playing all day, all night, whenever we're awake, it's there. And it's just continuing to generate that feeling. So that the feeling is just still there, and it can mount again until we need to do something with it, whether it is get drunk or go and have a shout at somebody or whatever it is that we do in order to feel better about it. So yes, this cycle just keeps on repeating.
And are they
And I
aware of
really
that? Or were you aware of that? Like, were you aware that it was
uh,
still there, or was it a heavy, I mean, you like the cinder block,
yes.
but you know,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because the instant you start having the thoughts recurring, the feeling starts to build again. And so you're just aware that you're not happy. Basically,
Okay.
something's not right. It might feel like frustration or anxiety or whatever it is. You probably don't even have a word for it if you've never really been taught to think about your feelings and actually experience and label them. So yes, you're right. It is a step-by-step process. First of all, you've got to just allow it and then figure out, okay, what is this sensation associated with? What thoughts am I having? What is it that I'm feeling in my body, and what emotion, what's the name of the emotion, what's the label I can put on this? So in order to help those of us who are thinkers and not feelers, who've never learned how to identify our feelings, there's actually this little tool called a mood meter. I literally found it online. I think there are different versions of them where it kind of helps you figure it out. It's like it's a matrix, and it asks you, is this an emotion that's like low and like low energy, kind of like sad? Does it drain you, or is it a high energy? Is it a motivating, urgent kind of thing? And then is it unpleasant or pleasant? And it kind of splits this up, and then you can work backwards from there. It's like, okay, so if it's a high energy but a negative emotion, it's like anger, frustration. It's kind of like into that red zone. Okay, now that's going to be caused by feelings of having observed an injustice, or having that kind of thing. So it's indicating anger and frustration. It's like something is wrong and I'm not happy about it. So then that helps you to identify, oh yeah, that's the kind of thoughts I'm having. I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry, whatever it might be. And this sort of existed for all the different for the four different quadrants to identify roughly what your underlying thinking might be. And then you can kind of pick the emotion that sounds most like what you think you're having. So you gradually learn to associate a particular emotion with a particular feeling in your body. And then over time, as you start experiencing that feeling, you're like, oh, that's the emotion. I felt that before. Okay, what am I thinking? Let's have a look at what thoughts are causing this. Are those thoughts appropriate? In this context, they were probably appropriate at 3 years of age when I first had that experience. Are they still serving me in this situation? No, they no longer make sense. I can let go of that thought, and now that feeling dissipates. Right? How would I rather feel instead? And what do I need to be thinking in order to feel the way that I want to feel, so that I can actually take the actions that I want to take and be the person that I want to be in relationship? So we work backwards, and we can also work forwards. So, if we know we're having a thought, but we're not quite sure what the feeling is, we can work forwards from the thought, and look at that whole chain of these are my feelings, these are the actions I'm taking, these are the results I'm getting, versus starting at the other end. It's like, I've just done this thing and this is my result. Gosh, what was I feeling? What feeling was driving that? And then what thought was driving that feeling? To look at that whole chain and understand where the thing that's not serving us is actually happening. Yeah. Gosh, I hope that all made sense.
Yeah, no, it really does make sense. And I see that all the time when I ask someone, how did you feel about it? Oh, well, I thought this, and then I have to
Mhm.
say again, no, how did you feel? And then they go again, well, I thought, no, they don't understand that. I mean, many people don't understand the difference. And you're right. And to also, what I really love is we are not that feeling, right? This is a feeling like, and one of the big things that happens with these feelings is we attach them to ourselves. And when we attach shame, which is it, shame just blocks any kind of healing. Well, can be trapped in shame for, let's I just say I exploded at someone and I'm so ashamed that I don't have the capacity because I feel like I am dirty and unworthy, right, to
Yeah.
apologize because I'm taking on the shame when that is just a feeling and to distinguish between that and what would you say to someone that was so trapped behind shame to get out of this and to move forward and to do what they need to do to be the expressive person or to make amends to whoever, the man that screamed at his wife or or his kids, right? I mean, and instead just to have that mask up and not to acknowledge it because the shame is so great. And then the family thinks, wow, he's so cold. But really what's preventing is
Mhm.
the shame.
Yes. And you know what? Underlying the whole thing, people not being able to feel, at the heart of it is shame, right? Because at the heart of it is this um, belief that if we express our feelings, then we're not good enough. Then we're not worthy of whatever it is that we're seeking from our loved ones, our caregivers, from society. So the thought is, I am unworthy. I'm unworthy of love, respect, and everything else that I could possibly want from others. And then the feeling that that thought of unworthiness generates is shame. Shame is the feeling that says, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I am bad. Right. And so this is something that is very important that I always like to share with people as a concept is it's really important to separate the person from the actions. And so there's a really big difference between shame and guilt. A lot of us think it's the same thing, but it's very different because shame says, I am bad, I am unworthy, whereas guilt just says, I did something bad. I can learn a lesson from that and I can make amends and I can do different in future. Whereas shame leaves us, like you said, it's stuck and trapped because if I am bad and I am unworthy, that is just my static state. I've got no ability to change that. That's just who I am. It's a core fundamental part of me, that unworthiness, as opposed to, you know what, I'm whole and complete and worthy and I made a mistake. Like all human beings do, I did something bad. Now I'm going to make that right. That's a very different thing. So I always encourage people to choose guilt instead of shame because guilt drives positive action, whereas shame drives us to hide. And yeah, withdraw into our shell and seem like we are, cold and all of those things. So if the outcome that we want is love and connection, we need to choose guilt. We need to, choose to associate a feeling with our behavior rather than with our being. So yeah, that's what I would say. But ultimately, whenever I guarantee you with every one of my coaching clients, when we dig deep to unearth the real underlying reason for why they're getting results that they're not wanting or self-sabotaging, acting against their own best interests, just not understanding their own behavior, if we go deep enough, at the base of it is shame. At the base of it is something deep inside them says that I'm just not worthy. And that from there leads everything else, that self-destruction, the self-sabotage, that I'm not worthy, is the culprit. So I think uncovering that is the most important thing, having that aha moment, and then helping them to shift that belief. And it usually takes time and many small steps from going from I am unworthy to I am 100% worthy no matter what I do. That is what we need to arrive at. And once we arrive at that, then we are so empowered to feel whatever we want to feel. Then once we know that we're 100% worthy no matter what, it stops mattering what anyone else might think or feel about us. And here's the thing to realize is we can turn ourselves inside out and drive ourselves crazy trying to be the person we think other people need and want us to be, to essentially people please. And the reality is that no matter what we do, we cannot control what other people think and feel about us. So if we can't control it anyway, we might as well be ourselves. We might as well be the people giving ourselves the validation that we would otherwise be seeking from other people. Validate our worthiness first, then go out into the world and shine. And if it turns out that they don't like us, that's reflecting on them. We're just not their person, right? So yeah, that's what I very much try to instill and ingrain in my clients as we work together, that sense of worthiness. Yeah, that takes practice.
Yeah, it does. It does take practice and to know that nobody's perfect and we just take tiny steps moving forward, maybe falling back, but keep moving forward. Don't give up. Even if it's a big giant thing, you think, "Oh my gosh, now I've sabotaged it forever." No, things can be repaired. I mean, the repair comes in the vulnerability and the courage to get past the shame and to make amends and do whatever you need to do, but to be honest and how beautiful integrity and honesty is. And that's not something that people are so afraid of that they're afraid of being hurt. But the right person, a safe space will recognize that and say, thank you for that. You're safe here. And that's
Yes.
what you need. That will distinguish whether you are with a safe person or you're going to be with someone that's going to attack you, because that's a gift, when someone is able to recognize that I hurt you and say that, and
Mm.
I want to make amends. That's a beautiful gift.
Definitely. Yeah. That was a really great thing that you said there, actually, because that's something that does very much come up about the not wanting to be hurt. So many people are hurting themselves in advance by keeping people at arm's length because they are afraid that if they open up and are vulnerable, those people will hurt them. So instead, they suffer the interminable, endless pain of never having the connection that every one of us really wants, instead of just being vulnerable, establishing the connection, feeling 100% worthy, and then no matter what the other person does, no matter how much they reject them, they will never, ever, ever feel as hurt as they think they're going to be because they are there for themselves. They will not feel unworthy as a result of the other person's actions. That's just on that person. They've got their own issues they need to work through. They might not be the safe person for them, but that's okay. So yeah, it absolutely comes back to that sense of worthiness. And I think, gosh, it would be so good if all of us could just learn that we are 100% worthy before we even get into relationship with other people. It would just make life so much easier. We would stop expecting others to make us happy, others to make us feel safe. If we know that we can make ourselves feel happy and safe, then other people can do whatever it is that they want, and it won't impact that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's very
Um,
true. And go ahead.
I was just going to circle back to one other thing that you mentioned
Uh-huh.
earlier, because I think this is really great metaphor that I've heard one of my coaching mentors use about pressing down or suppressing feelings, and about how it's so much easier to just allow them. And what she said was that when you're trying to push down a feeling and not feel it, it's like trying to keep a beach ball, an inflated beach ball under the water. So you're like jumping on top of it and you're balancing on it and you're doing your best to hold it down under the water with your body, but you can only do that for so long, and eventually it will pop back up. Okay. And then when it does, if you stop fighting it and you just let it just bob there, it can just be there. That feeling can just be there. And that applies to shame as well, because shame, it tends to be so deeply ingrained. We've carried it for such a long time. It does take time to gradually release it and start feeling that worthiness. While we're going through that process, the shame will be there. So, because you did ask, how do I help people around the shame? And what I teach them is, shame is going to be one of those really persistent feelings because it's being driven by a belief that's so deeply ingrained that you're learning to let go. But while it's there, it's just constantly going to be with you. So you can choose to just take it with you. Just carry it around like a handbag. It's like it will pop up occasionally and you'll feel it. That momentary shame will hit you to remind you how unworthy you are. And you'll be like, oh, there you are. Hello, shame. You're still with me. That's okay. I can get on with my life and carry you with me until I'm ready to let you go. So, sometimes there will be these persistent feelings, shame being the major one of them, that will just pop up because the subconscious thoughts keep popping up until we've trained ourselves out of them. So it's okay. We can acknowledge it and be like, you know what? Nothing is wrong with me. I'm not broken. It's my human brain doing what brains are designed to do. It's going to keep trying to repeat thoughts that I've had so many times that they're now automatic because my brain thinks they're keeping me safe. Right? They're keeping people at arm's distance, so they're keeping me safe. That's okay. I know I can stop believing that now, but it's going to take time for that to become automatic. So until then, the shame's going to pop up occasionally, and I'm going to be okay with that. Oh, shame, there you are. That's okay. You know what? I'm going to choose guilt instead. Let's keep going.
Right. I love that. Definitely. Because those things are coming. We know that those negative thoughts and everything are coming. So we can, when we see them and we expect them, and then we have it, this less, such a lighter attitude, like, whoops, oh, I see you there. You're trying to trick me again, right? We don't have to be taken down by it. It's not something we fear anymore, and we can just acknowledge and move on. And that takes time, but it's so powerful. I mean, it changes your life.
Mhm. Yes, really does change your life. I cannot emphasize that enough. And the biggest change is it takes you from feeling like a victim who's at the mercy of the world, and all of you, even if you are acknowledging that you're having feelings, that the feelings are being caused by the world, because that's what it feels like. We're just at the mercy of other people and the things that are happening, and they're causing us to feel terrible, and it's not fair, and we fight it, and it shouldn't be happening. And that's when we're like, burst it out at other people, or try to buffer it, because we just don't want to have to be feeling the feeling. As opposed to, once we come to understand all of this, we shift from victim mentality to complete ownership, accountability, and responsibility. And it sounds like it would be the harder thing to do, but it's not. It actually feels like the most empowering thing ever, because suddenly it's like, I am 100% in control. Whatever I'm feeling, I'm creating it. So I just get to own that. And if I'm feeling terrible, I've created feeling terrible. I'm going to own it. And then I get to decide whether I want to keep feeling terrible. It might be appropriate in the situation. I might choose, if I've just lost a loved one, I might want to be feeling grief. I might want to be feeling that terrible feeling, but I get to own that. I'm like, I'm choosing grief right now because it's appropriate. And that is fine. I don't have to be stuck in grief forever. I know that when I feel like I'm ready to move on, I can create other feelings for myself. Incredibly empowering. It just makes you feel like, wow, you're unstoppable. And
Yeah.
that's actually why that's what I called my Facebook group, because that's the thing. It's like once you have this understanding, nothing can stop you. Because ultimately the only thing that ever stops us from going after the things that we want, creating the things that we want in the world, is a feeling. And it's usually a feeling of fear that our unworthiness is going to be exposed, right? It's that shame, it's the fear, it's all of that tied up together. If we know that we can choose to feel differently, we can choose however we want to feel, we become unstoppable. There's no feeling that's going to stop us.
That's for sure. Yes, and it's liberation. So, well, yeah, and imagine the kind of relationships. I mean, you don't have to imagine it. I'm sure you're living it. But when we live from this state of freedom and not fear, then we can share anything with that other person, and that's a different quality of relationships that I see right now. So many relationships are at this flat level of surface level hobbies and similar interests, but they're not going past that, right? They're not, because everyone's afraid. I can't really open up because this person that I'm married to will really see the real me. It's like the imposter syndrome, right? I can't expose the real me. Now I've got them here believing, and we're doing it everything right. We might be good roommates, right? We've created this world that works where we go watch the same movies. We might go to the same sporting events. And it's okay. It's functional, but it's not what we're talking about here. A soul level connection that is explosive, that doesn't drive you to look for excitement outside of the relationship, because it's there in the relationship through those shared connections, through the shared intimacy of real tangible relating, something that is such a higher level than the typical relationship that people aren't even aware of.
Yes. And who wants to waste their time on superficial relationships? So, you know what? I think for me, again, I'm sure it is the same for you. This goes beyond just the intimate partner relationships that we're in. For me, this is my friendships. This is the people, that I'm encountering and having conversations with. I like to go deep quickly, because who has time to talk about the weather kind of thing? It's like, if I'm going to be relating to another person, I want to know who they are. I want to know what they value, what's driving them, what's holding them back. Let's explore that together, and let's all of us, learn to be more effective, to be more empowered, to get the results that we want, to create the change in the world that we want to see. That's what drives me. So I very quickly find myself, even with a new person I've just met, going quite deep and uncovering that stuff, and just having these really connected conversations, which I love. Often it comes as a surprise to new people who haven't met me before, because we'll have had a really good conversation and they'll say, I can't believe I've just told you all that. I've never told anyone else all of this stuff. And I don't even know where it all came from. It just all came out. Well, I know why. It's because I've got the skills as a coach to kind of draw that out from people. I love doing it because it's a great connecting experience for both of us. We both learn something and hopefully both of us move forward, even more positively from there. So yeah, let's not waste time on the superficial stuff, I say.
Yeah, that's very true. And I don't and so when I actually experienced that for the first time, that this powerful, intimate and intimate in soul intimacy conversation. So then I realized, wait a minute. I can't have that anymore with anyone in my life, pretty much. I mean, I do. Of course, I have to be out in the world, but for friendships is what I'm talking about. For those that are close to me, I have to be able to relate to you on a deeper level. I mean, it transformed my life. I was like, oh no. I mean, oh, wonderful, but oh no. Now these friendships are not fulfilling me because now I've moved up to an awareness of what something that really is fulfilling for my soul at a different level. Now that was transformational for me. So I had to let go of those friendships that did not were not able to connect. And that's nothing on those people. They just weren't able, their wall was so high that they weren't able to give me that in a friendship, and no matter what, and they didn't want to explore. Some people are just not interested in that. That's fine. I wasn't either at that point in my life, and at different points in my life. But yeah, it's a big transformation, and growth is so beautiful when we're willing to look at ourselves and say, "Hey, I don't need to be perfect. I know that shame is part of a life. Everyone feels shame, everyone feels guilt, everyone feels, but the key is to allowing and being and growing and like you said, I mean, being unstoppable. So yeah, this is amazing. And I see we're coming close to the end of the hour, but I want to make sure, where can everyone find you, Anita? And give us your final thoughts. I mean, we could go on for hours talking about, but
I think on a pretty big thought download, actually. But people can find me. Look, I'm most active on Facebook, and they can just find me on my personal profile at Anita Marriott. That's me. I also do have a Facebook group, which is that's specifically for my vegan community. So I called it Unstoppable Vegans, because of course we vegans are very often stopped by the world. Because of all the things that we do feel. So that's where I wanted to really focus where I help people, and that's who I coach. So that's where they can find me. But final thoughts are. Yeah, feelings are important, right? Whether we know we're having them or not, they do drive all of our actions. Um, we know, like from scientific studies that have shown that if our limbic system, which is our emotion center in our brain, is impaired, our decision making is very, very badly impaired, and we make very bad decisions. So we know that emotions are not only important in decision making, but in good decision making as well. So, given how important they are to everything we do and how our life turns out, I think it's imperative that all of us come to acknowledge that we have feelings and start paying attention to them on purpose, and actually uncovering what thoughts and what ingrained thinking patterns and what very deeply ingrained beliefs are actually driving those emotions, so that we get to address those and then take complete ownership, so that we never ever have to blame others or the world for how we're thinking and what we're doing, but get to be completely in control and therefore unstoppable.
well, there's a lot of wisdom here. I'm excited about everything that we have unearthed. And if you're watching, please reach out to me or Anita. Don't stay stuck. Don't stay in this pattern of pushing everything down, because as you probably know, it's coming out. And so we want it to come out in the best possible way for for you to create the life that you deserve. And if it's not me or Anita, get help somewhere, please. It Because you deserve it. I mean, we all deserve it. It's our birthright to live as we are and to honor ourselves. So thank you so much, Anita, for joining me today. I am very inspired after talking to you. And like I'm sure everyone else watching, please leave your comments. And if you're watching on the replay, again, subscribe. And thank you, Anita. And you'll have to come back on this show later. And
Oh, thank you, Mariquita. It's been an absolute pleasure.
bye bye, everyone.